Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We've got lots to discuss. No news, nothing. Yeah, negatory. It's like, but no, we've got lots of stuff to talk about. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
It's not a happy Thursday. As a matter of fact, it's shit. But let's talk about it. So, Major League Baseball finally went with the universal DH. And before Mike interrupts me, I'm wearing this hat because this was real baseball. This is before the DH came into existence. When I was 10 years old, it came into existence, and I knew it was a vehicle for players who couldn't play in the field to actually have a job in Major League Baseball. And my argument was always, hey, if you can't go out there and play the full 9 innings hitting and fielding, then you shouldn't be in baseball. That's the honest truth. Now, of course, there's always going to be an exception. A guy gets an injury, whatever. But for the most part, if you look at who's playing DH, it's true. The other thing is National League fans are National League fans. And there's plenty of us that only watch the National League, and we, on occasion, will watch the American League just if there's just a great matchup. But most of the time, don't. The reason was a lot of different things. There's a lot of tradition in the National League. Like, as an example, and it started with Bud Selig, and it's carried right through with Manfred. You know, the Cincinnati Reds always had the first opening day that went over 100 years. And then all of a sudden, Selig decided, oh, we have to do opening day now Sunday night. So, sorry, Cincinnati Reds. You'll get it on the next day. And then it got to the point now where they don't even get it anymore. They don't even get the first game on the next day or the 2 days before because they have a stupid game on Thursday. November baseball is stupid, but yet it keeps happening. That's another tradition that has gone by the wayside in baseball. I'm not against evolving because a game evolving is one thing, but when you take away striking features that fans like on one side and don't want it to just be exactly the same all around, it's going to cause a problem.
Well, even the biggest horror league out there, the NFL, maintains some traditions. Like, for example, Detroit and Dallas on Thanksgiving. They've added a games for profit because they're a for-profit league, but they maintain some traditions. Basically, and the funny thing is, baseball used to be the sport of tradition, steeped in history, and now Rob Manfred is going through the history of baseball with a knife and just cutting it out. And he is, Corinne, I said on Twitter, and I'll back it up. He is the worst commissioner, not only of baseball, but of professional sports. And the one that I think, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was the first commissioner of baseball, he's the one who banned the Black Sox back in 1920. And he was a congenital racist who kept black players out of baseball until Branch Rickey broke the color barrier in the 40s. And he was perceived as cleaning up baseball by banning the gamblers or by banning the players who took money. But then later on in the 20s, there were accusations of Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker taking money and consorting with gamblers. And because he had already cleaned up baseball and his reputation was tied up in that, he ignored that. He put it to the side. So Manfred is ruining baseball much worse than Goodell is doing it in football and any other commissioner. And it's really, for a sport that I love, it's a shame.
Yeah, but you say that baseball used to be a sport of tradition, but it also used to be America's pastime. But it declined in popularity big time, so they're just trying to shake things up, I think. Make it more interesting for the casual fans, try to get people back into baseball, because it's not as big as it used to be. So they're getting just a bit desperate.
What's funny? There are no casual baseball fans. You can't bring them in.
You can.
Beyond that point. I don't think you can, honestly.
You can. I'll watch when the Blue Jays are in a good run. I'm a casual baseball fan.
Okay, well, that's when the team's on a good run, sure, then you can get some. But if you're marketing or tailoring a sport, hoping to catch some of those other fans, you're not gonna.
Yeah, but that's what your designated hitters are for. They're big hitters. People like seeing big hitters.
They're not always big hitters. That's the funny thing. It's like a lot of times it's the bad contract guy that's going to be your DH part-time because now they could justify his salary. That's going to happen on a lot of teams. Some of them will be big hitters. Some of them will be washed-up hitters, but hoping to regain their form. Some of them will be used for guys who could barely stay in the game, like some of these bottom-dwelling teams like the Pirates. They'll get somebody who thought they were going to be out of the game, and now they could sign them cheap and throw them in the DH slot. It's not going to improve a lot of teams.
Well, let's just say this.
Some teams, yeah.
Let's just say this. When Edgar Martinez was let into the Hall of Fame, you knew that there would be sort of general acceptance of the DH across both leagues, because I never thought a DH deserved to make the Hall of Fame.
Same with me. I never did either. And he's a great hitter. What he was, a great hitter.
Yeah, but
he was a marginal fielder, and that's why he lost.
Well, he was an okay fielder, but after like the third or fourth year, they moved him from third base to DH, and that was it.
Because his range was bad, Mike.
Right?
His range wasn't great.
So I mean, if your goal is to add offense to this is the problem, Corinne. I don't know. Baseball is right now a dying sport, and Manfred is doing what he thinks is going to be good for making the game more acceptable to young people, like shortening the time of the game or putting runners on base. And the problem is, by doing that stuff, I don't think you're gaining new fans, and I think you're losing your old fans.
The putting runners on base I think is actually really stupid.
In hockey,
abomination.
In hockey, why don't you just have like a 13 forward now that could play all the time? And that could be a guy that just.
Well, no, but in hockey, they got rid of the draws. They did the 3-on-3 in the overtime. They're changing. I mean, every sport is changing.
They are, but they haven't gone over the line yet. This for baseball is going over the line. This is how lost they are. They're lost to the point where even Rob Manfred hired an investment banking firm to see how good an investment Major League Baseball is. Why would you do that? Why would you spend money on? You're not spending money on minor leaguers who are living hand to fist to try and make it into the sport, but you're spending millions of dollars on a stupid study for billionaires. It makes no sense.
All right, let's start the show. Ack will be joining us in a few minutes. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, February 10th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Karen Nice, the Abs blogger on HockeyBuzz, because stuff is happening in Montreal and not just bad stuff for once.
We'll debate that. And I'm Michael Agello, and this is HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And we'll start with Montreal since we have Corinne here. And I think it wasn't a surprise because, bringing in Kent Hughes, bringing in Jeff Gorton as your management team, you knew there were going to be changes. But I believe when Hughes was met the press a few days back, that he said that Ducharme, or unless it was Gorton, that said Ducharme was safe for the rest of the year.
Now, Gorton did say that Ducharme was going to stay for the rest of the years, but things degradated since then, so it was just not a bad.
Things decompensated from there because they play the Devils in the second. The Devils had played the night before and gotten their ass kicked by Ottawa. They come in and they kicked the Habs' ass 7-1. And you knew something was going to happen, and then Ducharme gets fired. Now, I don't know if it was Russ or somebody else in our group chat was saying, they're still paying Claude Julien. Now they're paying Ducharme.
But of course they are.
Yeah, they're paying Ducharme for another 2 years, and Julien, I think, for another year. I think this is the last year, maybe. But you've luckily there's no salary cap when it comes to coaches.
No, there's no salary cap for the front office.
So here's where I'm scratching my head. And I'm not casting aspersions on Marty St. Louis. We know he was a classy player. We know he's, a Hall of Famer. He's a great guy, all those things. But he was coaching like what? Pee-wee hockey in Connecticut?
Yeah, he was. He was literally coaching Pee-wee hockey. But you know what? I'm actually glad for this hire, because for once there's people at the head of the Abs that are thinking outside of the box. They're not going back into the Abs history book and thinking, oh, we'll just pick this legend or that one, even though he's a Molson rep right now. We'll be the coach, Mario Tremblay. I mean, you're much better off going with a guy that lives and breathes hockey. I mean, Marty St. Louis might have been coaching in Pee-wee, but he just had this presser, actually, and he said he's been watching hockey intensely for 10 years, and he's been preparing himself to become coach, and I actually believe him. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at the press conference, but he was sat there on the podium, and his face was actually saying the whole time, bring it on. I'll show you what I can do. And I liked that.
Well,
he oozed confidence. It was great.
It's a no lose for Marty here. He's coming. They have 8 wins. It's a clusterfuck in Montreal right now. It's a complete unmitigated disaster. So if they win 5 games, it looks like he's Toe Blake.
Here's the way I looked at it. I did think it was a little bit of a head scratcher. I like Marty. I know he's fiery, but there's 100 ex-NHL players that fall under the same category. I could go back to when I interviewed Edgar Laprade. He's a guy who won the Calder Trophy in 1940. I interviewed him for a book, and I asked him who the worst coach he ever had was, and he said Bill Cook. Bill Cook was a legendary player for the New York Rangers who set every scoring record of his era. Superstar. Went behind the bench, horrible.
Well, yeah, same for Wayne Gretzky.
Well, actually, not good. Like, we know what the dice roll is, and so we've seen
comparatively, Wayne. Like, if you compare Wayne to Rocket Richard, he retired after 2 games when he was coaching the Nordiques.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Wayne was actually pretty decent because I think he lasted 2 or 3 years. But the point being here is there's not a great record of the great player. Even in other sports, Ted Williams.
No, but as soon as Kent Hughes was hired, when he spoke about the modern-day coach, the writing was on the wall for Duchamp, because he said, you need a leader. You need someone who your players will want to follow into battle. Someone's going to inspire them. And on the other end, you've got Duchamp, who's like a bumbling idiot in front of the media, and his players are just dissing his system the whole time.
So let's talk about Duchamp for a minute. Like, I understood both sides of what EJ was talking about yesterday and Frank Saravalli, right? I would never presume to call somebody whatever because I'm not in the room. I don't do that. But, Corinne, we all pretty much agreed on this panel when we watched him coach in the Stanley Cup, he was getting out-coached. Yes, he won at other levels. It still doesn't make you an NHL coach. It's the same as college hockey and pro hockey. It's like you can win at other levels.
And talk about like, the stars aligning. He was getting out-coached in every series and still winning them.
The Canadians won series last spring or summer or whatever, not because of Duchamp. It was in spite of him. Because the moves that made them win, like bringing the kids in, he did it just because there were injuries. It was just like, thank God for injuries, because otherwise...
And they actually played better under Luke Richardson when Duchamp
they did.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that sort of irked me, and I know a couple of people said this. So Luke Richardson has basically been a candidate, has been somebody who has been a logical head coaching candidate for years, going back to, I think, the Binghamton Senators he steps in for Ducharme when Ducharme has COVID and they play well, and now Ducharme gets fired, and all they're doing is they're bringing in somebody, and they couldn't do Cunningworth 2.0. It's a shame, but it's because he doesn't speak French. He's not even in consideration because he doesn't speak French. I know it's stupid, but it's the way.
Let me ask you the big question. Spectre brought this up on Twitter, and it was I think he was right, because the Montreal fan base is different than other fan bases. We know that. And he said, you know what? If St. Louis is a disaster, what are the fans now going to think of Gordon and Hughes, 2 new guys? They bring this in, and if this goes up in flames, what is their opinion going to be of them? That's a fair question to ask.
I think the one thing here, Corinne, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, they didn't commit to him more than this year. They said interim. So this is like, okay, here's a job interview. You got 37, 38 games to see what you can do. And the way I looked at the hiring of Stanley, I think it's a mistake, but the way I looked at it is, okay, he's going to be like Ted Nolan was in Buffalo, in the sense that Ted Nolan is not an X and O's guy. He's a motivational guy. He's a guy who engendered respect from the players. Marty St. Louis has that gravitas. He is a Hall of Fame player. He's a great guy. The tactics are probably going to be with Richardson and the coaching staff. So if he's just the leader there, maybe it can work. But if it doesn't work, then I think they're looking for a coach in the summer.
Well, to be honest, I don't think that Abs fans are actually believing, yes, Marty St. Louis is here. He's going to turn everything around. That's not going to happen. No one can fix this tire fire right now. It's not going to happen. What people want to see is they want to see the Abs compete. We don't care if they lose right now, but there's a way to lose. The way they lost against New Jersey was just unwatchable. I mean, I almost never turn off a game. That one I didn't finish. I was like, yeah, this is enough. I can't take it anymore. But we don't think that Martin St. Louis is going to turn everything around.
It's a human suffering. I mean, I get that.
Well, yeah, that's borderline cruel and unusual punishment, quite frankly. I was thinking of doing a charter challenge myself.
And Corinne, there is supposedly, and I heard Connor McKenna who is on the radio in Montreal. It was on TSN radio in Toronto yesterday. And he was talking about how there's a sizable chunk of the Habs fan base that is pissed off because they want this team to lose this year. They want to be number one in the Shane Wright sweepstakes. And if you bring in St. Louis and he's successful, that lowers their chances.
I don't think that's such a sizable part of the fan base, quite frankly, because we all know that the man is not going to change everything by himself. And, we just want to have watchable hockey. I'm fine with losing, but I want to see the team at least try. What we saw in the last few weeks, they weren't even trying. But to be honest, I thought that St. Louis would be there on an interim basis, perhaps just to tell, Gorton and Hughes, okay, this guy is part of the solution, this guy's good, this one you want to get out and blah, blah, blah. But after seeing the press conference, I think he's coming in and he wants to stay. The way he spoke, he wants to be there long term.
Oh, no, listen, he could stay. There's no question about that. But again, you've got a bunch of players that right now are probably, fair to say, unmotivated. You are taking over with an angry fan base. And, I think it's an uphill battle. So even if he feels like he did his best job, and like Mike says, they win 5 or 6 games down the stretch, unless they see a culture change, the odds are he's not going to get the job.
Well, okay, let's go.
I'd be willing to bet with you right now, Ross, that he's going to get the job. Just the way they spoke in the press conference, and he seems to know Hughes and Gorton pretty well.
What if they don't look any better?
They will. Yeah. It's impossible that they don't look better.
Well, listen, we all say that, but I've seen teams sink further. I have.
No. This is the worst they've been in 110 years. Come on.
What if? Probably you're right, but what if they, they have 8 victories in the first 43, 44 games? What if they have 8 more victories and they go 16 and 67 or whatever the hell it is? What if they don't improve?
I think they're still going to give the manager a chance with a new form team that they're going to drawn up for him. Because you know what they said earlier? They said that we could have done better by Deschamps. We could have given him more of a chance to win by getting in new players. But we don't want to succeed right now. We want to succeed long term. Correct. So that's what we're thinking. So they're not expecting success right now. They want it long term. I think this is a trial run for St. Louis as much as it is for them. They want to see. He wants to see if he's going to like it. They want to see if he's going to like it. That's the point.
Okay, give me a read. I'm just going to read off names here and give me their status and what you think may happen before the deadline, because this is going to be
before the deadline,
meaning
before next season.
Oh, okay, well, either or, but I'm just saying let's get. I mean, we're not going to talk Carey Price because we know the situation there. Maybe he's open to moving someplace, but that's a big ticket, so that's a whole thing. But Jake Allen's injured right now. They have Caden Primo and Montalblanc as the goaltenders. Montalblanc. I always
Montalblanc. No.
Yeah, I always butcher it. Okay, Hoffman is he still injured? Is he back?
No, he's back. I don't think that he necessarily wants to move, and I'm not sure there'll be plenty of suitors for him because his rep isn't exactly great, is it? Okay. So I don't think it's the most attractive player.
Joel Edmondson has not played a game this year.
No.
What is his status?
Still back injury. His dad died as well, so he's not even skating right now. So, he's not going anywhere.
Okay, so has Jeff Petrie, did he actually request a trade, or is that just
not in so many words, but he's been told by management, we know what's going on with your family, we know you'd like to be in the US, if we find a deal for you, we'll accommodate you. So he didn't have to ask. Just the way his life is going right now, the way he's playing, clearly something's off. They want to move him. Will they be able to move him with his contract before the deadline? I'm not sure, but come October, he's not here anymore.
Well, I'm going to point out, Corinne, before Mike goes on with this, in 1939-40, the Canadians were dead last in the league with 10 wins. And in 94-95, they were 17th in the league. So they've had really bad seasons before.
Yeah, but not as bad as this. They haven't.
Oh, I don't know. In 1939-40, they were dead last in the whole league.
It was a World War II. We didn't care back then.
Well, no, it wasn't like the Leafs were invading the Sudetenland in 19. Anyway, okay. Ben Sharat, we know.
Yeah, he's moving.
Expiring contract.
He's moving, but I'm really hoping they're moving soon because the way it's going right now, the way everyone keeps getting injured,
Actually, Mike, I gotta bring
I'm
this up.
scared that he will get injured and they'll
This
get
is
nothing
funny.
for him.
This is funny from Wikipedia. So the first NHL game broadcast was between the Rangers and the Canadiens in 1940. 300 people watched.
That's like a Sabres game right now.
It's like a neighborhood.
Now, okay, here. So
they didn't have a lot of TVs back then.
So what you're saying, Corinne, is you think that they might be proactive in trading Sharat earlier, but to prevent having him get.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, yeah, you know, he's your most tradable asset right now because he's on an expiring contract and he can be really useful on the blue line. So trade him now, please.
Russ, just to break into what Timothy Park said, I don't know if the Harden-Simmons deal apparently has happened in the NBA.
Okay, well, I mean, the Nets have now got a guy who doesn't want to shoot the ball but will pass the ball and play defense, and that's great.
Well, great, and the Sixers have a guy who is basically like Santa Claus with the long beard and the stomach.
He's not that heavy, but will he be checking out Pat's and Geno's and all the cheesesteak places? Yes.
Yeah. And hopefully he's not like John Kerry and has Swiss cheese on them. Okay, David Savard is the one I'm interested in, Corinne. They just signed him 4 years, $3.5 million per.
That was a very Bergevin signing, quite frankly. I'm not sure that this new management is keen on David Savard. Really.
But the question is like, I think he is marketable. He's right-handed. The amount is not ridiculous in terms of cap it, but he is 31 years old.
I don't know. Maybe call Los Angeles, speak to Bergevin, see if he wants him back.
Yeah, well, I actually think in a weird way, not that I can see these two teams trading with each other, that Savard might be a right fit for Toronto because Toronto is looking for a right-hand shot defenseman who can play in the top four and a cap hit that's not ridiculous. So, I mean, but I see the thing is, and I was talking this over with Russ, well, for Petrie, I don't think you're getting anything back.
No, you're not getting anything back.
Because
guys, Petrie before the season had 4 seasons in a row.
I know,
40 points. He's a good player.
I'm not saying he's
capped out, Corinne. That's the problem.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he's not a good player. What I'm saying is he's having a terrible year. He's 34 years old, and teams are going to. And if he wants out of Montreal, they're not in a great position to say, okay.
No, they're definitely not in the position of force. But I think they see past the crap year.
Yeah, this is the conundrum. If they trade him at this deadline because they want cap space, they're getting nothing. If they wait and he starts off next year okay and they trade him, then they'll get something because he'll have only 2 years on his contract.
Then right. No, he's got
2.5. Won't be 2.5.
3.
Well, it'll be partly into that season.
He's got 3.5 right now.
Oh, he's got 3.5. Okay, so then
3 after the year.
It's a tough trade, Corinne.
Yeah,
I mean, it is.
It is, but I still believe there'll be interest for Jeff Petrie.
There might be more of a hockey deal in the summer because.
Well, yeah, that's why I said by October, not by the deadline.
Are so close to the cap. It's
now,
tough.
Now, okay, moving up the forward. I think eventually, but maybe not this year. I think eventually they're going to try to find a way to trade Gallagher.
Gallagher, I think, when they appointed Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes, Gallagher was asked, so what do you want to do? You want to stay or do you not want to stay by the media? And it was like, well, when I signed my new contract, I said that my priority number 1 is winning. So obviously I'll need to think about what's going to happen here. So just by that, you can tell that Gallagher is not really interested in reconstruction. I mean, it sucks because I like the player, but I think he's on his way out of town. And interestingly, today there was an optional skate on the day that the new coach is there. Gallagher wasn't there.
Yeah, see, that's a sign. I agree.
I was like, whoa, that's weird.
Now, I know that he played really well last year, and I loved the way he played before he got injured in Columbus. But I look at Josh Anderson now, and 5 more years at $5.5 million.
That was a dice roll that we, Eck liked it better than we did, Mike. And we knew it was a dice roll. We said, hey, if he turns out, and even Corinne said this, I don't think you were 100% on board. You were kind of like, hey, if he turns back into the old guy, the one from a couple of years ago, it's a good trade. But if not, I mean, a good signing. But if it's not, it's not.
He can have an impact. He's able to have that impact, but the guy is so often injured. It's unreal.
Yeah.
He needs to shake this off. But I think he's staying basically because there won't be any takers. So That's a Bergevin legacy. You
I want to
started
get
that
back.
one.
I want to. It's interesting to see, talk about Gallagher getting traded, and I'm thinking about teams that would want him, right? And how many more years are left on his deal?
Gallagher, 5.
Forget it.
5 at 6.5.
He's not getting traded. Never mind. Next
Now,
up.
let me throw one more name out here before we get X to take on the Montreal thing. We haven't even talked Edmonton yet.
Yeah, we got a lot going on today.
Okay. Heard the chatter about Pavelski and Colorado. We've heard the chatter about Giroux and Colorado. I'm always suspicious of the move that hasn't been talked about. Yeah. It's been talked about in the past.
Drouin, Colorado.
Jonathan Drouin and Colorado because of the McKinnon connection. And I would rather, even though Pavelski, even though Giroux are rentals and Drouin has one more year, his cap hit's a lot less than Pavelski.
It is, and I think part of the reason that Jonathan Drouin is still there is because Bergevin sacrificed Sergachev to get him, and he wanted that project to work. He didn't want to say, okay, I give up on Jonathan Drouin, but Hughes hasn't got that sort of a tie to Drouin. So yeah, I can see that happening.
But he's no longer there, so I think Gordon has carte blanche to be able to make moves that Bergevin wouldn't. So, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we've talked about Drouin and Colorado so long.
Yeah, and I wrote about it. I wrote about it a lot. I wrote a blog about it about a month ago that it was heating up again. That it was out there already, and I really think that I think this is a Nathan McKinnon thing. This is definitely one of those things that McKinnon would love to happen. He's really tight with Drouin. He thinks Duran's a great player. He's frustrated with Duran. I've heard this from many people. He's frustrated with what Duran's had in his career happen, But no, you can't be frustrated with Duran. Duran, you can't blame anybody but Duran for Duran's career, honestly.
No. Okay.
I mean, I honestly think
I blame the Canadians for bringing in a talented player and putting him in a position that he was not meant to play. They brought him in as a center. It was Philly Lano,
not just a center, a number one center.
No, they did.
In Montreal.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe I was being a little bit over.
Alex Galchenyuk, Jonathan Drouin. How many friggin' times you
even in Tampa? Even in Tampa, his consistency was all over the map. I mean, he had moments in Tampa where he was really good. He moments when he wasn't.
You muted yourself, Russ. Russ, you're muted.
Unmute you.
You're muted.
He was young and headstrong then, and I remember him having some issues with some players. I think that's a different guy now.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I know, like I said, McKinnon loves him and would like to see him redeemed. Like he wants to.
I'm sure.
Part of that. He thinks that this is a guy. Obviously they played together. They set all kinds of records. McKinnon credits.
And I'm not saying all of these guys are going to get traded, but I heard Elliot Friedman mention Dvorak and his possible trade. We've heard Toffoli rumors.
Toffoli, I wouldn't be surprised because Toffoli can be quite useful, and he's got a low cap hit really.
Nobody will laugh harder than me if Christian Dvorak gets traded.
We just went through the list there, and we just mentioned 8 or 9 players. You better set up a tent outside the Bell Center for the deadline because that's the way it's going.
I think I can get there, with COVID and everything. But
I can.
Yeah, you can. All right, we'll set up the Karen tent. The Karen tent outside. Come visit Karen in the tent. We'll go check her out.
So give us your thoughts on San Luis before we move on.
So I have a funny story. So one of the first All-Star games I ever attended, I was invited by an agent who was a friend of mine to after dinner. Like, let's have dinner in Dallas. This is in Dallas. This is the first All-Star game I ever went to. As a media member. So I'm in Dallas and I know that. You were at that game, right? And it was kind of fun. It was fun. I did the whole thing.
Dallas was good.
It was great. I went to there. I saw how the youth hockey program was running. Amazingly, I was really impressed with Dallas. Anyway, after the game, I go out with this agent, 2 other friends of his, Tim Thomas, who was the MVP of that All-Star game, or should have been. I don't think he was, but he should have been. I think he had but he should have been, I thought, at the time. And the other guy was there who I had never met before was Marty St. Louis. So I got to have dinner with him and sit there and I was just thoroughly impressed, like completely and utterly impressed with him in every way, shape, or form. Just beyond just obviously we know what he does on the ice. We know what he does there. He know how classy he is. We've been through that. We've seen how he handled seamlessly the transition out of Tampa to New York. He's just putting me a class in how he's been always. But he was a University of Vermont guy, right? There was another University of Vermont guy at this party too, by the way, who I don't know. I can forget who it was, but anyway,
it wasn't John LeClaire.
No, it wasn't. He wasn't in that All-Star game.
Okay.
He's
the only other University of Vermont guy that comes to mind in the NHL.
For some reason,
I'm sure there's been a few others, but those are.
I think this was somebody who was at Vermont who was being wooed by the agent and brought down to the All-Star game. I think that was what was happening. So he may not be in the NHL. I'm not even sure he was. But anyway, I was solely blown away by Tim Thomas's non-athletic feeling, like the feeling like you weren't like I've hung out with people and there's no way he was a professional athlete, like
right.
Having like sitting in a booth at a bar with Tim Thomas was really crazy. Like he just absolutely was like he was like your brother's fat no your friend's fat older brother. That was like Tim Thomas to me. He was like that's who he was. Anyway, but Marty St. Louis and Thomas are tight, and they really talked, and they really completely. I was just kind of blown away by the whole thing. I think this is a fantastic move. Like I think this is the kind, and I know he's never coached before, and I know.
Yeah, I know he's coaching that. He's coaching Pee Wee.
Yeah. Well, I know he's never really coached before, and I think that our Captain EO is coaching Pee Wee too, but I don't expect the Flyers to call him up.
No. Captain EO's playing for Team USA in Beijing.
That's true. He's in Ericsson.
Captain EO has a mustache now. He was hiding it behind a mask. Looks pretty good.
That's pathetic. All right, I haven't seen that yet, Russ.
Wow.
All right, so anyway, all right, so
nice guy. Way to go.
Here you go. Very nice guy. Worked with him for a very long time. Anyway, all right, so
Victor Stahlberg's another University of Vermont.
That could have been it. That I think that is it. That's pretty funny because this agency did sign it. That's who that must be who that was. Anyway,
another on the Leafs trash heap pile.
But here's the thing about Marty St. Louis that was really just like ultimately impressive to me was just like when he talked about the All-Star game, and it's the All-Star game, and it's like there's nothing really happening. But he was just like, like man, the things that you would do if it wasn't an All-Star game with this kind of talent out there. And he started talking about, he's like this is this line. If you in an All-Star game, you play this line together. He's like, but if this was a regular game and I had that team, this is the line I play together, which was like a totally different combination. And so he was already at that point. What I remembered about it was he's thinking like a coach, kind of, like he's like a guy who's just completely tuned in. I was just really impressed.
But what was interesting in the press conference he just gave, though, is that he was asked about what kind of hockey he wanted the Canadians to play. And he said, I'm not much of a system guy. I don't like systems. You box in players in a system. I like concept, team concept. I want my players to read the game, not just be stuck in a system. So I think that's going to be interesting.
Not everybody's as smart as Marty St. Louis at reading the game. That's the problem.
I'm telling you right now.
Marty can read the game and not have a system, but other players do.
Remember the book on Ted Nolan in Buffalo. He had Paul Terrio and he had other assistant coaches who were the X's and O's guy, and he was the motivational guy. He was the inspirational guy. I'm telling you right now, based on that, that's what Marty St. Louis is going to be.
I'm going to go back to this, Ted Williams, largely known as the greatest hitter to ever play in Major League Baseball. When he was managing the Washington Senators, after he got fired, they said, what was the most frustrating thing for you? And he was like, I couldn't teach anybody how to hit like I could, and it frustrated the hell out of me. That is a possibility for St. Louis.
There is an element, and a huge element with Marty St. Louis of just naturally God-given talent, right? Like there's the reason he makes it at his size.
Yes, there's a lot of talent there, but there's also a lot of fight and a lot of improving and a lot of perseverance. So
here's why I think it's a perfect move. I don't think he's a long-term coach for the Montreal Canadiens. Like I really don't, and he might be, but this is like they went to him. This is how what I think happened. They went to him and they said, "We need somebody for the rest of the season, Marty, for sure. We know you've never coached before, but we think that you're such an inspirational guy." And if you think about it, like the prototypical Montreal Canadian over the last several years has been the smaller, feisty guy. Like Marty St. Louis is the best of that kind of player that's ever been, right? So he's like, you come in here, you put some inspiration into these guys, show them what it's like to be around a Hall of Famer who's won Stanley Cup. Give them that attitude. Players love other players. Players love players' coaches. It's like I remember talking to Hitchcock so many times about how much he hated that players loved the coaches that were players. Like Hitchcock was like so frustrated by it in Philly, especially because Philly never got to Carter.
Well, it's only because Ken kept hearing early in his career before he won a Stanley Cup that, hey, you're not a former player. you're not going to be a great coach. Like he heard
No, but
that.
this goes beyond that. And this, so he had a lot of success when he coached in Philly. By the time he coached in Philly, he had a lot of success already.
Yes,
He'd already won a
that's true.
Stanley Cup. When he got fired out of Philly, I talked to him on the phone later that day after the press conference, after everything was done. I'm friends with him. You know, I said, I'm sorry, man, this is really rough. He's like, yeah. And he was like, almost not in tears, but really frustrated. He's like, just and he said to me, like, these guys like Richards and Carter, who were there at the time, remember, he's like, these guys will never accept a coach that wasn't a player. He's like, they'll just, and he told me that flat out. He's like, that's on it. And he was so mad about it.
Well,
but that's just an aside, because the actual reality here is that Marty St. Louis has so much respect among players that you're going to see. I think this is going to help the Canadians. It's almost like bringing in a player coach for a while. And just these guys, they don't want to turn it around. They don't want Marty St. Louis to have like this incredible streak right now.
No, but systemless hockey worries me. You're seeing that now in Philadelphia. Just as an example, and then we'll go back to this. Just so Corinne understands what I'm talking about. I was looking down at the time. Yesterday, the Flyers had a 5-on-4, but only 4 guys were on the ice. The other team gets a 2-on-1, comes back. The puck goes back the other way. The Red Wings get the puck back the other way. And finally, a 5th player came on the ice for the power play. It was like 35 seconds of a power play when a player wasn't there. That's what could happen in systemless hockey.
Well, I know Eck wants to avoid talking about the cluster F that's the Edmonton Oilers, but we have to talk
I'll get there in a second. Let me finish one thought with this, because I have one more thought with this, and then Mike will definitely go there. So my feeling is this, that Marty St. Louis is there for the time being, and he's there to.
I agree with that.
He's there to put in, and he knows it. He knows it too, I think, because he knows that he's not really qualified to be a NHL head coach yet. You know, like
I don't know if he knows that. I'm not going to say that because
or maybe he doesn't. Maybe
he thinks he can do anything, which is fine. That is part of what makes him him. Yeah, you're right. But at the same time, if he gets fired, you can hear him saying very quickly, "Well, I wasn't really ready for that, whatever." But because he's that way too. He's a really humble guy. So humble and yet incredibly driven is a great quality.
It's like Dale
also can be incredibly grumpy. So there is.
Oh yeah, no. He expects people to work, and you're gonna. That's the Montreal Canadiens are gonna work hard under him. That like they might not have a system, but they're gonna work as hard as they can at not playing that system, I guess. But they will definitely, But I think that I look at Caulfield, like a guy like Caulfield, who is so important to this team, and this is a great mentor for him. Like this is and I think that comes into it too. They look at who's moving forward with us, who's going to be part of our team, and. There is Caulfield has not really been treated in Montreal like he should have been treated.
That's one of the reasons why Ducharme is not there anymore. Yeah. Kent Hughes actually said today that we wanted him to finish the season, but then seeing the way the players were used and what was happening with development and all that, we just couldn't stand that anymore.
Well, Hughes is right about Ducharme. Like we talked about that with Caulfield not getting in the playoffs last year. And then, this year he has a hiccup. I didn't mind that they sent him down because he does still need to round out his game. Everything else is there, though.
Well, the worst thing you can do to that kind of player is put him on the 4th line with limited.
You see, the part that's sending him down is not the issue because he got to that point, Russ. But it shouldn't get to the point where he has to be sent down this year. Like that's fair.
He should be played in spite of his areas of his game that he needs to develop. He should be playing in the top 6 because he's got top 6 offensive talent.
Yes,
and especially now when you're 45 games into a season and your season is a complete loss, take the pain defensively and see if he can develop offensively. But
I think that's what happens here. Marty St. Louis will bring that. Marty St. Louis, remember, was with Tampa before Tampa was good too. Yeah. He was there when he was there, and it saw them through that process. So I think that this is perfect. Long term, no, it's not. And if he just turns out to be the most incredible coach ever, but it really reminds me a lot of like Patrick Roy in terms of just like an emotional coach who's going to go in there.
That's why I've said Ted Nolan. I think Ted Nolan.
I've watched Patrick Roy in person coach in junior hockey, and what makes him successful in junior hockey is they're not going to mess with Patrick Roy because they're young guys. This is NHL. Even though Marty St. Louis is a feisty guy and they could tune Marty out very easy. These NHLers if they want.
Showing them his Stanley Cup ring.
God help you.
They've already
Cup ring to them. Jesus.
Yeah, God help you if you tune out Marty St. Louis. Is all I can say. Like because he is.
You're not UFA, you might do that.
5 foot. He's 5'8" of absolute fireball fury.
Yeah, if you're a UFA and you don't like what he's saying, you could tune him out.
All right. Now I happened to be watching last night, the Blackhawks and Edmonton Oilers game.
Yeah.
I was dumbfounded by how much the Oilers have just checked out.
They have totally checked out.
They played two games in 2 nights. They played Mike Smith in both games. They got shut out by Vegas. They dominated shots on goal and chances early in the game against Chicago. Yeah. They lose to them 4-1. And when I heard this this afternoon from Elliot Friedman, I mentioned it in the group that it just dumbfounded me. I've been saying forever they need to get a goaltender.
Yeah.
And we thought, okay, Ken Holland, he's got to be going out and getting a goaltender.
Oh God, I don't want to.
Well, he supposedly offered. What's that?
I said, oh God, I don't want to talk about this. I know where you're going.
Yeah.
He supposedly offered a 5th-round pick for Martin Jones. Okay, that's real. That's real.
First of all,
gumption when it comes.
First of all, Fletcher needs to be fired right now. Like that. If he doesn't take that,
he should have taken it.
I give up. Like
this is a bigger systemic problem where I think there are still people in Flyers.
And I'm kidding. He doesn't need to be fired right now. I'm going to get
no. But I think at that point, and I think even now, as of yesterday, before the game, maybe after the game, they don't feel that way. That they felt like they could still string together 10 wins and still be in it. So I think that's probably why they didn't trade Jones, but they should have traded him.
Well, I'm talking about the Edmonton side of the thing is we know that Edmonton has needed a number 1 goaltender for 3 friggin' years.
Well, and the whole world. The problem is the whole world knows it too, Mike, and no one's going to hand it to him.
At a certain point, you gotta pay the piper.
Yeah,
but they don't have much cap space. They don't have great prospects. What are they paying with, Mike?
You fell short on Markstrom. You fell short on Grubauer. And now, when everybody knows you need a goaltender, you're not going out and talking about Varlamov. You're not going out and talking about Khudobin. You're talking about trying to trade for Martin friggin' Jones
because he doesn't make much. Why did they fall short on Markstrom? Because they didn't have any more money.
That's exactly it. And they don't have money because it's decisions they've made over the last several years, and that's also
it's like the last 5 years. It's before Holland,
right?
So Ken Holland paints himself into a corner, doesn't get a goaltender, doesn't really improve his defense, and now he fires Tippett, and maybe that was overdue. But you know what? This is not Tippett's fault. This is Ken Holland's fault.
Yeah. I mean,
listen, we know that Jones probably is no better than what they have. We get that. And I get what Mike is saying too, but it's not like Ken Holland had a million options in the offseason. He didn't.
The problem is,
I'm not saying he's done a good job. He hasn't.
You get the sense that Ken Holland trusts his own ability to evaluate goalies. Like that's my frustration in this because
he was a goalie.
Or something like that.
I think there's something to it.
There's a weird thing there. Like, he needs to find, to me, it's Khudobin. There's no 2 ways about it. I'm a goalie, and maybe and he costs a lot. But I've seen Khudobin win recently. I've seen him.
Former goalie. I just want to tell you that.
I'm still a goalie. Yeah, I was out there on my rink just 2 days ago before it melted, and I was out there.
Well, honestly, I call into question Ken Holland's ability to evaluate goaltenders because he went out in his tenure. He went out and signed Cujo when Cujo was at the bottom end of his career. He went and signed Hasek at the bottom end of his career. He won Stanley Cups with Chris Osgood, not exactly Terry Sawchuk.
That's the bottom line here, Mike. Holland has not been one who's ever put a huge emphasis on goalies. Honestly,
he's wrong.
And he is wrong. But
what I wouldn't be
Go ahead.
Incredibly surprised to see happen? I wouldn't be surprised to see Price end up in Edmonton.
I'm with you.
In a hockey trade in the summer with Canadians retaining some salary during a rebuild. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen.
Possible.
And Price, you tell him, do you want to go to Edmonton, play with McDavid and Draisaitl? I mean, who's going to say no to that?
Until McDavid and Draisaitl ask for a trade 2 years.
Right, Price will be.
Well, but part of them not asking for a trade 2 years from now would be bringing in Carey Price. I mean, that I think is a big.
How do they afford it?
I don't know.
The Canadians retain some salary,
and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins probably goes back to Montreal on the deal. Honestly, something
like that. Move, and he's not moving.
Yeah, he has to agree. Obviously,
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins might be okay with that. He is the crazy thing. I heard the statistic this morning. He's been there for 12 years in Edmonton. I mean, he's been in Edmonton for 12 years and he came in 2011 or He came in 2011, so 11 years maybe, 2009.
10 years.
All right, so 10, he that's how many coaches he's had.
7.
Right, it said 7 coaches. Yeah,
That's crazy.
and I guess this is the 8th. So the reality, or is this that's just and Tippett's been there a while.
Problem.
Like Tippett's been there a while too. That's the other thing that's weird about that. So it feels like Tippett's been there a while at least, right? He's been there what, 3 years?
Yeah, but again, this is what happens with Tippett though. It gets to the point where Tippett, gets the team to overachieve at the beginning. Then they start leveling off. But he never upsets the apple cart enough that you want to fire him. But then you just eventually have to fire him because, like what Mike just said, there's nothing else left to do.
Yeah, I mean they have to find their way to Hudobin or something along those lines, like a goalie.
Okay, let me ask a question. Why wouldn't you do that when Tippett was there? Tippett was probably begging them to, I have to start friggin' Mikko Koskinen.
I mean, actually, Tippett is a player's coach and probably wasn't begging them to do that. Like the reality is, Tippett is the kind of coach who probably was like, just like, trust me, I know my team, I know my players, they can do. That's the kind of he's not the coach that's gonna, like, Babcock's in there, like he's a different story. Like he would be just
that's the thing I was surprised at. I swore, and I had no inside info. I swore that they were gonna go if they were firing Tippett, they were gonna go Babcock. And maybe Babcock is still too toxic to hire.
Yeah, he is.
I didn't.
And McDavid knows that, but this is the thing. They go through McDavid, right? So like McDavid has played with Babcock, coaching him in different situations for Team Canada, right? He has at this point.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think Chris Knobloch, if the Rangers let him talk to him because he was his Erie coach.
This is an interim. They're letting Woodcroft.
That's fine. Knobloch would take an interim spot, and it's still a step up.
No, I'm saying Woodcroft
was named the coach, not the interim coach. So that's what's.
Yeah. They named him the coach.
They named him the coach.
Wow. Todd Woodcroft.
Now I'll tell you, the thing about him is, first of all, this has been in the run. This has been talked about for a while, and that's why when you talk about Martin Jones being the trade thing happening a little while ago, Martin Jones, there's no way they're making an offer for Martin Jones without talking to Woodcroft, right? Because Woodcroft was the assistant coach for the San Jose Sharks for most of Jones' career, right? So he knows Jones inside out, and if you know Jones, he's a great guy, and it's like you really want him to succeed. You can see why this would happen, right? So, but Woodcroft actually has like an amazing reputation among people I've talked to. And I met him when I did a big story in San Jose when I was out there. And I just was, again, like just one of these guys. He reminded me, like I met Sheldon Keefe one time too. And I would say that Woodcroft and Keefe, they're cut from like the same kind of mold. And they're both roughly like 45 years old, roughly around there, right? They have the same sort of system. Bakersfield's a fun, good team in the AHL.
Do you know what his record was at the University of Vermont?
No.
5-18-2, 1-10-2.
Okay, that's man. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just saying that all I know is
what he's Todd Woodcroft. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy.
Oh, yeah, but that's that it's hard again. Just like people are being people are being a little hard on Ducharme because he didn't have a lot there, even though he was screwing up what he had.
Right. Did you like anything he was doing in the playoffs? No. The answer was no.
We sat there and said there was nobody was. He was like the opposite of whatever Murphy's Law opposite was. That was Montreal in the playoffs last year. If anything can go right, it will. I don't get that, and that was the strangest thing, right? So, but yes, I think Ducharme is getting unrighteously ripped, which is not fair.
No, but that's fine. That's fine.
I mean, but at the same, because he's a friggin' NHL coach, and he will probably be back an NHL coach. But but this guy, I think. I mean, Bakersfield is one of the class organizations of the NHL.
Jay Woodcroft.
The AHL.
Jay Woodcroft. Sorry, we apologize. Jay Woodcroft.
Jay Woodcroft.
Oh, that's all right. So it's not Todd. Okay.
No, it's Jay Woodcroft. Yeah, there you go. And Jay, if you see Jay's career
if it was Todd.
He was never drafted into the NHL, but his career as a player is like the craziest group of teams that he played for. Like he started off in Alabama. He played for Alaska. He was in like El Paso.
Then he was in Alabama Huntsville. That's cool.
Yeah, he was all over the place, and his playing career is crazy. He's a good guy. He will get along with McDavid really well. Like McDavid and he will let this team.
Oh, okay.
Like Keith lets the Maple Leafs go, he'll let the Oilers go. Now, whether or not that'll work or not.
And this one would smack Mike a little, but I think he would see what where I'm headed with this. So now that we know what we know about Karel Vejmelka, who was signed to a 1-year deal by Arizona, do you think he would have been an upgrade for the Oilers? I kind of do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't.
He was a free agent.
He was a free agent.
Yeah, but he wasn't even on the radar.
He was for Arizona.
Oh, I know that, but who's to say he was for Edmonton?
Well,
Yeah, Arizona. But
you
the
wanna-
radar for Arizona is literally like going to like TJ.
Russ. He played in the Czech Super
I
League.
get it, but when you're a team, you have to be aware of all of these guys. And I'm getting to X point where he basically says Holland is a little too insulated.
There's another
That's a guy they could have gotten.
There's another slam on Ken Holland. You should be scouring every goddamn third-rate league in Europe looking for a goaltender with your goaltending situation, but he didn't. And he went right back to Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith.
Yeah, but the problem in Edmonton goes back way more than since Allen is there, though. I mean, they had like an avalanche of first draft pick, and they went all out on the attack, thinking if we score goals, we'll win. They're like the opposite of the Montreal Canadiens, who thought if we stop goals, we'll win.
That doesn't work. It didn't work for the Tampa Bay Lightning when they played.
I know that. Edmonton doesn't.
But here's where it really doesn't work.
Stupid.
It really doesn't work when you have a coach like Tippett, like who is
He's a defensive coach.
Who is a defensive coach, right? So that is what he did in Arizona. Was he would be the perfect, like I don't know. I mean, he would be the perfect coach for them in so many ways. You're
gonna throw Tippett back to Arizona?
Oh no!
Guys, I gotta go.
No, Montreal. Like I'm saying, like,
no.
I'm not saying that I don't want Tippett in Montreal now.
By the way, here's the connection between Ken Holland and Jay Woodcroft. He was video coach for the Detroit Red Wings for 3 seasons.
There you go.
And on that, I'm gonna go because I've got my other job waiting.
Thank you very much.
See you soon, guys. Thanks for having me.
See you soon. Yeah, I know he was. Listen, his real connection is he's been in the AHL. He's been his AHL coach for a couple of years.
No, I get it, but
like, so he knows him.
There's a fair point, Eck. He can't play in goal.
No, he can't. And that is going to be. It still has to be addressed. I still think it will be addressed. I don't know how. I just can't imagine it's the Marty Jones route that there we go. Like if you're gonna go, and yet I also don't think
back to that. If they went to it before, I think they're going to go back to it again.
I don't think it can. I don't think it can be, the Fleury route because
a fourth this time and say he won the trade.
Oh man, I can't imagine. No, I mean there are other guys. There are other guys out there. There's definitely guys out there that can be like. I think Halak is a better option. Like there's like.
Yeah, but Halak's
not after last night. He had a horrible game.
Halak's got a no move, I believe.
He's got a no move, but he's a hired gun right now, and he's gonna be he's the situation where if he gets a chance to go to the playoffs, and Vancouver's not going to the playoffs, for example, with Edmonton, that's like if you're going to be a UFA, that's a golden opportunity as a goalie. Like you go in there and you get a chance to play with the Oilers. I mean, the Oilers could get hot. You never know. And if you don't get hot, it's not your fault. So at the end of the day, that's like the reality is that Halak would go there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think he's got the ability to show up in big games, in big situations. And that's why I think Garrett Halak is
here's a bigger thing.
Open or Halak, either one.
Remember how they used to say that Philly was a toxic environment for goalies, but Carter Hart's kind of shot that down, right? I think Edmonton has become that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason why a Markstrom doesn't sign in Edmonton.
It could be.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, that had to do with it. Like there was, Markstrom. Yeah, and it came down to Calgary offered him more.
It's been more than a few years since a goalie's been really good there.
Yeah, and it's not. You need a goalie you need a special kind of goalie who is not going to be who is a kind of goalie that plays better when they're getting pounded with shots.
Right.
That is not Martin Jones. Okay. Jones, even when his best, was not the best goalie when being pounded with shots. Jones is like a solid, he'll keep the game close goalie. That's what he is. But he's not like the pounded with shots guys are Hudobin and Halak. Those are two guys that in their careers have gotten pounded with shots and excelled in that position.
Flamester, here's a little clue. There's a certain thing called assists that this guy does not know the concept of.
Mike, let me give you a clue. There's a certain thing called line mates. It's like
apples. He's allergic to apples.
Andrew Mangiapane, it just has no line mates. It's like it's insane. Anyway, I'm telling you, there's a couple guys that I've always been right about these guys. You guys know this. Like when I pick a guy out ahead of time, I'm not a good prospect guy like you, Russ, but I pick out guys and they turn into something. And this is one of them. And the other one is Connor Garland, who I still think is like if it being available again. I honestly think that he is another one who
it does sound like Rutherford is going to try to move him because his salary is low, and we know Rutherford likes to make hockey deals, so he's got to generate some flexibility, and there might be some teams out there.
And at the end of the day, he likes Besser and the guys he has, and he wants to keep them. So that's where it comes down to. But man, if I heard Florida linked to Connor Garland, if Florida gets Connor Garland, that's crazy. I mean, that
would be crazy.
I mean, because he's a lot like Bennett in a lot of ways. Like Bennett and Garland are very similar type.
I agree with that, but honestly, if Bill Zito does anything other than trade for a defenseman, because I think their defense is okay, but if they got Chychrun, adding that to Weegar and Ekblad, then they're a legit. Then I think they could take out Tampa.
I think they'd win the cup even more than I think they'd win the cup now.
Yeah. From what I heard, that Chychrun thing they are so far apart from, and there's many teams that haven't talking to Arizona, as I was told, teams that haven't talking to Arizona are way closer to getting Chychrun than Florida is.
Well, I mean, if Arizona is looking for an Eichel deal when it comes to Chychrun, I mean, speaking of Eichel,
it might be worth that.
I did want to mention one thing to the chat room. Paul Simon, if you want me on your podcast, just go on Twitter and send me a DM. See? Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. If you want me too.
Mike doesn't have to be on it. Anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And no one ever wants to be on their podcast. We've seen it.
We got a few minutes.
There we go.
We got a few minutes before we have to end the show, but Brad Marchand's 6-game suspension for his hijinks. Any problems with that?
Too low.
Too low
at this point.
It should have been 10. It really should.
My point, what I wrote in my blog is like everything has to start at 10 at this point. Marchand has to start at 10 because he's in so many friggin' situations.
You can't tell me even 6 is going to have an impact on him.
No, it doesn't, and it doesn't have an impact on the Boston Bruins either. So that's like to me, in order to get the way to get to Marchand is to make an impact on the Boston Bruins.
Team USA beats China 8-0. Unfortunately, the U.S. can't do that in geopolitics against the Chinese.
That's a start. You got to start somewhere.
I'll mention I watched the first period. That's what I watched, right? And and China did put up a little bit of a fight in that first period. I kind of had the feeling that the tide was going to turn, but I will say that Drew Comesso did really well. So Kevin Allen could say what he wants, but I'm still fully on board.
Okay.
The thing that he did best was he was gloving everything. Like there was no secondary rebounds. If he does that throughout the tournament, that's going to help a young team like that tremendously.
Yeah, Sean Farrell, who's a Montreal prospect, had 3 goals and 2 assists in the game. Russ, you mentioned the prospect for the is it for the Czechs, Slavkovsky? Yeah,
Slavkovsky is like an amazing skater, dangler. Just so much ability, and he had 2 goals in his first game, tied an Olympic record because he was 17, and they also have Simone Nemec on that team, and so I want to watch another. I missed that game, but I want to watch a Slovak game just because of the draft eligibles. I've seen them before, but I want to just see them again in a different environment. So to me, that's fun. That's good. Again, though, the level of play is, compared to the NHLers, is down a lot. Though.
Oh yeah, please. I mean, I didn't see the final. I know that the Canadians were beating the Germans 4-1 in the third.
Jordan Wheel is having a big game.
Who was?
Yeah. It's just and he has that ability. He does. He's got
for like 3 or 4 games, and then he doesn't show up for like
20. when he works really hard. If he works at his hardest, he's an interesting player. But he doesn't always work there.
I'm going to give you 2 guys though. I talked about this on another show. China has the Fu brothers, Spencer Fu and Parker Fu. Spencer was on the Union team with Shane Gostisbehere when they won it all. He's been playing in the KHL. He is a pretty good scorer, always has been, and was putting on a pretty good show in that game too. The issue was always his foot speed. Now his brother has had trouble finishing, but has much better foot speed. These are 2 guys that are not that old. Parker is only 23, and he's actually property of the Blackhawks. So it's possible that if he does well, he can come over. These are the kinds of guys that by playing in this tournament could elevate their status, get them a contract in either the NHL or the AHL instead of playing for Kunlun. So, there is an opportunity for some players here.
We had 25 players on that Chinese team from that team in the KHL, which is really funny.
15 of them naturalized on the spot, heck.
Yeah.
And finally, good news in terms of hiring in Vancouver. Cammy Granato hired as an assistant general manager by Jim Rutherford. Now they have 2 women in their management. He was it was Emily Costangay, I think it is the name of the other. But Cammy Granato was a scout with Seattle, and she lives in Vancouver. She's married to Ray Ferraro. It makes more sense to her, living situation wise, but also the fact that she's now like a sort of power broker in that organization. It's just not like a scout. She's making hockey decisions. This is a good thing.
Here's the one thing I want to mention about Cammy Granato. So I covered the I forgot the award now. John Halligan won it. Stan Fischler's won it. Cammy Granato won it. But they were all there the same year, and it's a very famous award for like the NHL and USA Hockey. Name is escaping me. Someone in the chat room will know it. Anyhow, I interviewed Cammy Granato for a while, right? And the things that really came through in that were she's super smart, super competitive. Like she used to play against guys. Now, a great trivia question is, who's the all-time leading scorer for hockey at Providence College? It's Cammy Granato. He has the all-time record. Nobody's going to break it. That's amazing. No guy, nobody will break it. She's had that many points. But she also would say that when her brother played with the Rangers and was playing with Leach, she was like a contemporary of those guys.
Yeah, she was.
And so when you have that kind of gravitas, that means you could get things done in the NHL because they fully respect everything about you.
I think I talked before about my little go after this. I think I've talked before about my cross-country flight with Don Granato years ago, just where we happened to be sitting next to each other on a plane between Vancouver and Boston in that series. And I talked to him a lot and I told Ron, as I'm talking to him, I'm like, man, I've talked to a lot of hockey people. You're like up there among the smartest hockey people I've ever talked to. I'm not trying to just float your boat, but I was really impressed with those ideas. He said, well, I'm nothing compared to Cammy. Yes, I remember him saying that. He's like, Cammy Granato.
Sure, and I was talking about Tony, because Tony was
talking about Tony who played, but Don who is coaching now for the
it's the Lester Patrick Award.
Lester Patrick Award, yeah. But Cammy was always one of these guys who's like, crazy, just smart, just knows hockey inside out.
Really knows hockey, and that's the key.
Absolutely. All right, time I have for today, folks. We'll be back in tomorrow, maybe with a surprise guest. We're not going to say commit yet because I'm waiting for a couple of logistical things to work out, but remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. You'll definitely want to check out tomorrow's show at 1:00.